Hello, and welcome to another episode of In the Spotlight, where we shine a spotlight on entrepreneurs, innovators, and creatives and SMEs. I'm today delighted to be joined by David Horne, who is a second time visiting In the Spotlight. And I'm really excited for you to be with us today, David, because I know that you've been very, very busy.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you, Maxine.
Okay, so for our audience, could you start by introducing yourself and just tell us a bit about what inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
Okay, so my background is finance. I trained as a chartered accountant with PwC a long, long time ago. Worked with PwC, then got a job with a big corporate that was a client, stayed in big corporates for a while, and then in 2000 moved into more medium-sized companies. I was the chief financial officer of three companies during the noughties that were medium-sized businesses that all had one thing in common, which was that they all raised money and bought other companies. So I learned a lot about fundraising and M&A. The first company was a PR agency. The second one was a digital media group that was listed on the stock exchange. And the third one was an auction business that was also listed on the stock exchange. And I became a bit of an expert in fundraising. But the auction business, we did a huge acquisition just before the global financial crash happened. There was tremendous turmoil. We got the acquisition done. We made all the changes that we said we were going to do. And then the crash came, and 6 months and four profit warnings later, the chief executive got fired. It wasn't his fault, but somebody had to go. And the board brought in a new chief executive, and he and I just did not get on. So I knew that if there was going to be a fight, I was going to lose. So rather than lose a fight, I got in touch with the chairman and said, look, let's have a grown-up conversation. And I moved on. And I have had what I call my midlife crisis moment. I tried to launch a wine business. I decided I wanted to do something totally different, something around a product that I loved. And after much research and self-review, it boiled down to either music or wine. And my then teenage daughters said to me, Dad, you're too old for the music business, but wine would be perfect. So I set out to launch a wine business, having never worked in the wine trade, having never sold anything before. And let's just say it was a rude awakening. And I carried on with that for a couple of years, and I went into a deep denial, which was not a good place to be. And then in the summer of 2012, my dad suddenly passed away. Fortunately, I was able to be at his bedside when he died. And that was the kick up the bum that I needed to get my life back on track. And I thought, okay, I really don't want to go and work for someone else before. So what can I do? And I thought, well, what I can do is what I've done all my career. I'm a finance guy. So I started looking around and pitching to SME businesses, doing a lot of work with startups, which was fun, but startups don't have any money. And so then I looked at the fundraising side, and I kind of dabbled around with a number of different businesses. And then in 2016, I met a guy called Daniel Priestley, whom you know as well.
Yeah.
I did his program, and that was a game changer for me. And after completing his program, Dan rang me up, and I've been the chief financial officer of his business for the last 8 years. And I now I've now built a business. There's six of us, and I'm the CFO of about a dozen companies, none of them full time. We run finance departments for businesses, and I support them on fundraising and M&A. I've published a book about it called Add Then Multiply. And then while I was doing that, I was speaking at an event about 6 years ago now, and a woman came up and asked me why so little funding went to female founders. And that led to the creation of a social enterprise and the publication of my second book, because the reality is that even today, and I was looking at the statistics this morning, the level of funding to female founders is still appallingly low. In the UK and Europe, they've been tracking this data since 2008. In 2008, it was 2.4% of all venture capital funding went to all female teams. This year, it's currently running at 1.5. So the level of money in the industry is growing, but it's still not going to female founders. And so I've been doing a lot of work around that. I speak actively about that, and I'm working on a number of projects that are designed to support that.
Yeah, that's incredible, David. And you did say as well that there's been some changes with the business that happened last time since you were on. So do you want to just share a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, in terms of the finance work that we're doing, I think one of the key shifts was when I first started out, I was a fractional CFO. and going in and being the part-time CFO in a number of different businesses. And one of the key shifts that I had was that actually, rather than just being me as the fractional CFO, I can put whole finance teams into companies. And so I'm now doing that work, and I've got half a dozen clients now where I and my team have taken over the finance function and are running that on behalf of the entrepreneurs. So my team is doing a lot of the tactical day-to-day stuff so that I can focus on the more strategic and high value stuff, which is what I find a lot more fun and interesting anyway.
Yeah. So you've actually now become the KPI in that model.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely. And then the other thing, the other key development, and this is something that I'm still working on, is that I am planning on creating a new group where I'm going to create a new holding company. It's going to be a PLC. It won't be listed yet, but I want one day to have it listed. And I'm going to put my companies into that, and I'm going to raise some capital, and I'm going to acquire a bunch of female founded businesses, and we're going to grow them and scale them. And then after 2 or 3 years, as long as we can demonstrate the right kind of growth that I am convinced is available and achievable. And all of it, there are so many reports that show that female founded businesses perform extremely well. So I'm going to demonstrate this over a 2 to 3 year period. And then I'm going to go out to private equity and say, okay, now I want to raise 10 million and do this at a bigger scale. And let's run with that for 3 or 5 years. And then I want to list the company and say, okay, let's now raise 100 million and really do this properly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when I was researching this book, it became very, very clear to me that the only way to really drive change was to create something new. There is no incentive on the venture capital industry to change. They're making tons of money doing what they do, and the levels of change are, well, you look at the curve since 2008, it's flat.
Yeah.
Never above 2% in the UK and Europe, never above 3% in America.
And do you
So
feel,
I'm creating something that's new, that's different.
yeah, do you feel that with female founders versus, say, if we do gender male, is there a different mentality that's actually driving that statistic
I
or
think
not?
based on the work that I've done, I think there are three core drivers. Number one is just inherent gender bias. It's a lot better than it was when I was a kid, but we've still got a long way to go. Number two is that there are still not very many women in investment roles in funds. So there is a growing number of women, but they're in junior roles. They're not the ones making the investment decisions. And there was a fascinating piece of research conducted by a woman who's now a professor at London Business School. She did her PhD study at Columbia in New York, and she looked at the TechCrunch New York City startup battle pitching contests over a 7 year period, downloaded all of the pitching events into some software that's way beyond my technical capabilities, analyzed all of the pitches and all of the Q&A sessions. And she found there was no material difference between the way men and women pitched, but there was a huge difference in the type of questions that were asked by the investors of male or female founders. 67% of questions asked of male founders were what's called promotion questions. How are you going to double your market share? Where are you going to hire your next 100 employees? And 66% of questions asked of female founders were what's called prevention questions. How are you going to stop the competition from stealing market share? What if 10 of your employees leave? And what was really interesting was that both male and female investors showed the same bias. So I think because, and of course that it was 10 years ago now, but because of the relatively low number of women in the industry, those who were in the industry had to adapt their behavior um, to be more like men because that was how they succeeded. And
Yeah.
I mean, one of my mentors, one of my mentors was a very, very early trader in the London Stock Exchange in the 70s. And the stories she tells about the rampant gender bias that was going on at the time is just unbelievable. Yeah, so that's kind of number two, is the lack of women in the investment management industry. And number three is that women tend to be much more conservative than men in their financial projections. And if you look at the venture capital industry, their entire model is based around where's the next unicorn company? And a unicorn company is one that's going to have $1 billion valuation. And their whole model is we will invest in companies that show the potential of becoming $1 billion company. And a lot of women aren't necessarily interested in finding a billion-dollar company. But what's really interesting, Maxine, is women who have received funding run better companies. There's a number of pieces of research. My favorite one was produced by Boston Consulting Group, and they looked at funded companies over a 10-year period. And they determined that companies that had at least one woman in the founding team generated 2.5 times as much revenue per dollar invested as all male businesses. It's
That's
a
incredible.
staggering difference.
That's
And so
incredible.
and so what I'm trying to do is find a way and find a vehicle that provides the capital that enables female founded businesses to grow.
I was going to say that there's a couple of points there where you talked about that gender bias because in facilities management, the industry that I grew up in, I remember the early time in my career, so 30 years ago, very male dominated. And I remember buying trouser suits. So instead of it being like a skirt and like very feminine, it was the three. I used to love these three piece with the
The waistcoat.
waistcoat, the
Yeah.
jacket, the trousers, because you emanate it. Was you had to demonstrate, okay, you're doing a job, but you're absolutely right. Even the way we dressed, even the way I dressed back then, was very masculine. So it's quite. I can very much resonate with that. And then when you said about women that have investment perform better, as opposed to women that basically bootstrap it and
Well, no, I
self-fund.
mean, this wasn't looking at bootstrapping self-funded versus invested. This was simply looking at companies that have received investment.
Yeah,
The ones that have women in their founding team outperform the all-male teams.
yeah, yeah,
And they researched something like 500 funded companies over a 10-year period. So it wasn't, oh, well, there was a Microsoft or an Nvidia in there that totally skewed the data.
yeah. That's incredible.
And there was
What?
another piece of research done by an investment bank in Australia, and they looked at the MSCI index, which is a big index of top global companies. There's like 14,000, multi-billion dollar companies in this index. And again, they found that businesses that had women on their board of directors, at this stage, it's no longer founder led. These are big corporates. But businesses that had women in their board of directors outperformed all male teams by a material amount.
Yeah. I'm going to be quite feminist though. Do you think that's because we're quite good at multitasking
Definitely,
and actually
definitely.
thinking about several different things at the same time and just like,
Definitely.
gee,
I also, as I said, women tend to be more conservative. I think men are more reckless. I think women are much more focused on, okay, let's test something out, let's try it, let's see if it works. Whereas the men are just kind of full steam ahead.
yeah, yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. Tell us about what the next couple of years look like. So you've talked about developing a PLC. What's happening currently in the business and towards this female funded
Well,
support?
right now I'm running three tracks kind of at the same time. I'm putting together a board of directors. I'm 90% sure that the woman who I want to become the chair will. And then I have a fairly ambitious short list of people that I would like to also invite to the board, and we'll see what happens there. But I'm wanting to bring together a board of primarily experienced, successful female entrepreneurs who have either grown companies and are still running them, or have grown companies and have exited them. And I am also looking, I won't name any names, but I'm also looking at a big city female name that people are going to look at it and go, wow.
Yeah,
So someone that's going to, like, for investors, it'll be like, wow, and for people who want to join the group, it's like, wow, you've got her on your board. That's incredible.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm looking at doing that. That's my first stream of work. But the first and most important thing is to get my chair on board. And like I say, I think I'm about 90% there. The
yeah.
second stream that I'm running is finding potential businesses to join the group. And I've had discussions with 6 or 7 so far. 4 have said yes. One of them is still thinking, and 2 of them said, love the idea, but my business isn't ready to do that. I want to grow it more before I would do anything like that, which is totally understandable.
Hmm.
I tried to argue that, well, you could still grow your company inside this, but they want to grow it more, and I get that, so that's fine. So I'm still looking for companies that fit what we're looking for. And then the third strand that I'm running is I need to raise £1 million, and I'm looking for some high net worth investors who support the mission of what we're trying to achieve. And I'm primarily talking to exited founders because I know they have money.
Yeah. Yeah. And just going back to the criteria for the businesses that you want, that you're looking to join, for our audience that might be listening, what is the criteria that you've got there?
Female founded business. For this first batch, I want to keep it fairly tight. So it's going to be UK focused, female founded, service businesses that serve the entrepreneurial community. Because part of the idea will be that we can take all of the different businesses and cross sell across the customer base. And let's just say, for argument's sake, that each company had a list of 10,000 prospective customers. So across the 6 companies, that'd be 60,000. And let's say half of them are duplicates. So there's 30,000 unique customer IDs in there. Well, that's 20,000 new customers for every new potential customers for every business. And then the other thing we're going to work on is getting what I call the plumbing right. Right. So we're going to look across all of the businesses. Well, what's going on with your HR practices? We've got a new Labour government in the UK. We've got significant changes coming to employment rights and all of that. So let's make sure our HR is right up to scratch, because we don't want to get caught out on anything there. Let's put my finance teams across all of the businesses, because one of the things I've discovered is entrepreneurs tend to be pretty good at sales and marketing and pretty good at operational delivery, but not very good at finance. So let's make sure that everybody's on a solid baseline for the finance. Let's then look across the piece from a technology angle, and I'm hoping that one of the companies I acquire will be a tech company. And let's look across those businesses from a tech angle. What technology can we put in to support and develop the growth of those companies, particularly with an AI focus, because AI is just so hot right now.
Yeah.
And again, for a lot of smaller companies, they don't have or aren't sure about making the investment. But by raising capital, using some of it to do the acquisitions and some of it to fund this investment, we can have money across that patch. And then the final piece will be that marketing thing. And again, I'm hoping to acquire a marketing agency. So we'll go across that. We'll have that uplift in the number of prospective clients, but we'll also make sure everybody's doing the best practice from a marketing angle.
Yeah. It sounds
And then once we
absolutely
get that in
fascinating.
place, we focus on growing these things.
Yeah.
Because if we can demonstrate real growth, then we can take it out to private equity and raise a lot of money and go out and do that a lot more. And the idea then is basically the companies who are coming in, they'll get some, when we acquire them, they'll get some cash, but they'll get most of their payment in shares in the new PLC.
Yeah.
So that as the PLC grows, their value grows as well. So not
Yeah.
only are they focused on supporting their own business's growth, but they want to support everyone else's business growth who's within the group.
Yeah. It's incredible. Sounds absolutely incredible what you're doing there.
It's exciting. It's a little bit scary, but it's also really exciting.
It does sound exciting, and I'm really going to be happy to share this with people. And what is the turnover of the female businesses that you're looking at?
Typically, I'm looking at businesses that are turning over at least 500,000, ideally 1 million. Um, but we'll have a look. I'm in discussions with a couple of them that are smaller than that, but there are certain things about them that kind of make it fit. But I would like most of the businesses to be, at least 500,000, ideally 1 million. And that's really, again, based on my past experience. I've done a lot. As I said, I did a lot of work with startups. I've launched a few startups. I'm a co-founder of a number. Startups are great fun, but unless they've got money, it's really, really hard work. So my focus and my skill set is really more on how do we scale? So how do we take companies that are already trading successfully? And I just say £1 million is a great threshold, because when you've got £1 million in sales, you've definitely got some version of product market fit. It might not be ideal, it might not be perfect, but it's working. So that's kind of my target range right now.
That's amazing. And then where does, in society now they talk about environmental sustainability, social impact. How does
At
how does
least
that
on this side of the Atlantic, we're still talking about that.
we are, but how does that fit into this framework at all? How do you
100%, 100%. I would love, and I need to look into it more. I would love for this group to be a B corporation. So very much people, planets, profit. Oh, sorry, people, planet, profit.
Yeah.
So the triple bottom line, and focused on sustainability, focused on DEI. I think what's going on in America right now with the obliteration of DEI is a real shame.
Gosh, yeah.
It's a backlash, whatever. But I think it is a shame, and I think it's really important. I was at an event yesterday that was looking at the DEI initiatives of companies in the fund management industry, and it was really really interesting. But there's been a lot of improvement. But one of the stats that I need to study the report more closely. One of the stats was that something like a third of the venture capital firms, because this company has been tracking this index for a number of years, a third of venture capital firms have actually gone backwards in terms of their adoption of sustainability and DEI and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. But how do you feel? So when we're looking at growing and scaling, and it's on a global scale for these companies,
Well,
and then
initially, we're going to be quite UK focused, I think.
UK focus first of all. You
Yeah,
see,
and
this is me thinking.
and trying
I've
to,
already got you in every continent.
well, in my head, the first round is going to be UK focused, and then when we go out and raise 10 million, we're going to expand it to be a European focus. And I'm doing that quite deliberately because it means that we can still keep it manageable. You don't have to travel more than 2 or 3 hours to get anywhere. And, especially with the increase in train travel, because again, if we're going for sustainability, we don't want to be flying everywhere. Just managing that side of things. But ultimately, when we're a listed company, yeah, it's going to be a global thing.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. Thinking big. So,
Really.
what else? What else have you been up to? As if that's not enough. What
Well,
else is happening?
on a personal level, I have two little grandchildren. I have a little grandson who's 2.5 and a granddaughter who's 6 months. And that's just, I mean, that takes love to a whole new level.
Because the last time I saw you, you wouldn't have had your second grandchild.
No.
No, my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's wonderful. She's absolutely adorable. And we're going down this weekend to see them.
Oh, that's lovely. Do you know what? I've got this running debate at the moment on the spotlight about work-life balance or harmony. And so far, with every conversation, it has been the harmony that's winning out. So, which camp do you sit in terms of work-life balance or work-life harmony?
That's a really, really good question. My views on that have changed so much from when I used to work for companies to when I run my own business. I work 7 days a week. I don't work full time 7 days a week, but I work 7 days a week. But I love what I do. I enjoy it. It's not work. People say to me, when are you going to retire? And why would I want to retire? I love what I do. And I have the flexibility that I can, my wife, I mean, I'm originally from Vancouver. My wife and I go back to Canada every summer for a month. We've already got 4 city breaks planned this year. So I'm probably taking 8 or 9 weeks of holidays. When I was in corporate, I remember having to fight to get 3 weeks off to go back to Canada.
Yeah,
And now I go for a month and it's totally fine. And I'll stay in touch with the business and with clients. And if there's issues, and jump on a Zoom call, and it's just a time zone difference kind of thing, and all that. But yeah, I don't view what I do as work. I view what I do as my calling.
yeah. Yeah. And I can resonate with that in terms of, and for me it's like six days, but then I have to still have a day because my daughter's only
Sure.
19, still at home, and
Absolutely.
right,
My
and,
kids
and
are my
you
kids are grown up and living on their own, and now raising their own families. So it's totally
yeah,
different.
and it's kind of I say a newish husband. We're only in our third year, so I
Yeah.
do have to kind of temper otherwise I'd just be going just
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah.
So I do try and allow it a
But it's
day.
interesting because like my in-laws don't understand this. My father-in-law is a retired GP. My mother-in-law is a retired teacher. And they'd spent their whole life working in the public sector, and it was work hard, and then when you're 65 you get your pension and off you go. And I'm 62 now, and I mean, I just kind of think, in 3 years time, if you told me I couldn't carry on doing what I'm doing, it's like, well, what would I do?
I get it. My mom. Well, I'm one of eight siblings, and my daughter. So not my daughter, one of my sisters. So 4 sisters, 3 brothers. But my sister, who's 15 months younger than me, I asked her about just coming on and doing some stuff with me, and she says, "Oh no, I'm just slowing down and just not doing, taking it easy these days. And I was just thinking, oh my God. And she's like younger than me. And then I have my mum saying, I launched the academy last year. She goes, okay, now you've launched. When are you going to slow down? And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
I've
Never.
literally just launched. It's the
Yeah.
beginning. You have to
Exactly.
kind of, it's a crazy mindset.
Exactly. Yeah.
But David, for our listeners, can you just tell us the best piece of advice that you've ever had as an entrepreneur?
Wow. The best piece of advice I've ever had. Let me give two. They're kind of linked, and they're both taken adaptations from someone that you and I both know very well. One of them is that you can think and design and test and work on a product or an idea or a service all you want in your head and write it down and all that. But until you take it out to the market, it's just an idea. And the only place that you can take it to test it is in the market. And the market's either going to say, hey, this is amazing, and they're going to buy lots of it, or they're going to say, well, this is okay, but you need to do this, or they're going to say, actually, it's a crap idea, so, don't. You've got to take it out to the market.
Yeah,
Absolutely 100%.
yeah,
And the other piece of advice, and it's linked to taking it out to the market, is that the process of pitching isn't a single step. It's a series of things. So, you might be trying to win new business, and you'll go to a networking event, and you meet 50 people in a networking event, and 3 of them might be of interest. So then you have a follow-up with them and a discussion, and you might have a Zoom call, and then you'll go and meet them in person. And it's a series of things. Pitching is a journey, not a destination.
yeah. That's a really great piece of advice, especially when you're new, or you have a new business and you kind of think, oh my God, they're going to be knocking down the door. But you're right, that initial connection is
Exactly.
just
And
the
and
first
then
step.
the number of startup entrepreneurs I meet, and they're talking about, oh well, yeah, I've got this going, and I'm working on my website, and I've ordered my business cards, and all of that doesn't matter. Take whatever you've got and take it out to the marketplace and test it. And
Yeah,
test it before you start spending a lot of money.
that's such great advice for our listeners. Thank you for that. Before we go, before we go, aside from your two, if you just pop your two books up again, Add and Multiply and Female Funded Founders, what other resources have influenced you?
Lots of other books, my favorite book of Daniel's is Entrepreneur Revolution.
Mm,
Some people that I've worked with in the past. So the founder of the business that's the main case study in this book is now a business partner of mine. We do some big scale things. So we're currently working on a project with a biotech company that has already raised $90 million, and they need another 15 to finish their stage 3 trials. And we have the mandate to go and raise that 15. So, that's quite cool. And yeah, just doing different things and meeting people and learning from people. I mentioned who's one of my mentors. I mean, she's in her mid 80s now. We're having lunch next month. She's wonderful, and the things I've learned from her are just amazing. Yeah, so just seek out people, seek out people who have experience, and meet them and talk to them and ask them questions.
yeah, that's incredible advice and great words of wisdom. We're at the top of our time already. It's just gone so quickly. It's gone, and it's always a pleasure to speak with you and find out what's happening in your world of
Likewise.
entrepreneurship. Really exciting things for our listeners, and that's coming on the horizon, especially for our female founders. And when we share this, if you've got that interest, David, how can our ladies get hold of you?
On LinkedIn, it's David B. Horne. Just go on to LinkedIn and David B. Horne, reach out and connect with me. You can go onto my website, addthenmultiply.com. We've recently launched our own thing called the Funding Fitness Index, which is a scorecard type product where you go in and you answer, I think, 24 questions, and then you'll get a 20-page PDF report analyzing, based on what you've answered. Here's the things that you need to focus on to grow your business. And as part of that, you'll get a download of this book. And there's a link to the Calendly if you want to set up a one-to-one with me. So if you go onto the addthenmultiply.com website, and up at the top right, just click Funding Fitness Index, then yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank
Okay.
you so much for your time today.
My
This has
pleasure,
been
Maxine.
another episode of In the Spotlight with David Horne. Thanks for listening. Until next time.